Friends, I think we will. I think we will get started. In true custom, good morning, Scotland. Good afternoon, Malawi. For those of you I don't know, although I see a great many friends and friendly faces that I do know, I'm David Hope Jones, the Chief Executive of the Scotland Malawi Partnership. I hope you're keeping well. For those in Scotland in the heat. You can probably hear the whir of a fan next to me, and I think for the first time I ever put ice in my Mzuzu coffee. For those in Malawi who haven't heard, it's an exceptionally hot day in the UK, almost certainly be the hottest day on record in the UK. And I know a number of people have contacted me, say they'd hoped to be at today's meeting, but because of those circumstances, they're not able to. But wherever you are, I hope you're as comfortable as possible. Welcome to this, our second in our summer sessions series. Quick context for those who weren't there in the first. The idea is through the summer months, when firstly scheduling's a bit more difficult, we thought it'd be really useful to try something quite different of a discussion time, keeping strictly to 60 minutes, really listening to as many different voices as we can, rather than having a fixed agenda and named speakers. And I suppose in doing that, what we're trying to replicate is in an in-person event, what we in the UK would call the sort of water cooler moment. That valuable conversation where you can tap into someone's experience or learning or expertise in ways that you never planned and were quite organic. We had a vote in the bulletin to decide 3 key themes for these 3 sessions. They were decided to be our first one on power. That was in June. You can watch the video of that on the past events page of our website. Today we're meeting to discuss sustainability, easy to say, hard to do. And in August, I'll say a bit more about this at the end of our meeting. We're talking about digital inclusivity. In a moment, basically, I will have said my piece, and I'm just going to throw it open. And I'm entirely reliant on good people putting their digital or physical hands up to share their views. And I suppose what we're looking for here is contributions of perhaps 1 to 3 minutes. It'd be brilliant if you could identify yourself at the beginning of your contribution. And if you could share your experience or reflections or learning around this theme of sustainability. But please feel free to also respond to others. We really want it to be discursive and two-way. So please feel free to come back to something someone else had said, and we'll just see where the conversation goes. As with all SMP events, we do have a high expectation of respect being shown for everyone, including those you disagree with. And I'm really keen to encourage a diverse range of contributions with a really good mix of male and female and Scottish and Malawian. So it's hard for us to curate and control, given it's an open space conversation, but really encourage you to take part. I often find with these things, the most valuable voices are from those who need the most encouragement to speak up. As you will have seen in joining, the video is on. As with all SMP events, we'll have a full recording of the 60 minutes on our past event page. We may also look to edit out snippets of really what we call those valuable nuggets of expertise and use it elsewhere in a future piece of work. But we will contact you if we're going to use anything you've said for any purpose other than the full video. You will have seen in the promotion of today's event, we've set 7 or 8 questions, and I'm going to very quickly read those out. But what we found worked in the first of these sessions was, rather than being too prescriptive of saying, now we're talking on question 1, now we're talking on question 2, these are prompts or triggers for you to think of, and really just an open space, and you can respond to as many or as few of those questions as you wish. If we dry up, or if I feel we're not listening to a diverse range of views, I might call on people and really encourage them, or come back to specific questions. But really, these are just triggers for discussion. So very briefly, those questions you'll have seen is, what does sustainability mean to you and your partners? Can you share an example of an approach you've taken or been involved in, or have seen that you feel has really helpfully built a partnership be genuinely sustainable? Have you seen an approach which you feel has actually undermined sustainability? Have your views on sustainability changed over time? Should everything be sustainable? Is sustainability indeed the right question to be asking? Are there resources or information or advice that you found really useful in building sustainability? What advice would you give yourself relating to sustainability if you were starting your partnership with Malawi or with Scotland afresh. And what more, in really tangible terms, can we do as individuals and as a community to support sustainability? And can building gender equality support a more sustainable approach? That's, I think, everything that I want to say. And I'm really hoping that some good people are going to put up their digital hands. What you often find with these things is it's hardest to get the first people to contribute, and then there's a flow, and then we run out of time. So if you would like to contribute on sustainability, please do put up your digital hand, or just give me a wave and I will call on you. It'd be wonderful to hear from someone. I must also warn you, while I'm waiting for a hand to go up, I've got, I think, a 6-year-old knocking at the door. So potential entertainment. If there's any dead air that needs filling, we'll turn to the under 6 Hope Jones contingent. But I did see a very shy finger going up from Tracy, as if she was bidding in an auction. Tracy, over to you.
You know, I always have something to say, David, so I apologise in advance, and then I promise to be quiet and listen to everyone else. So I think you asked a very good question. What is sustainability? And I think that's already a big challenge. And in the 20+ years I've been involved in Malawi, what is sustainability has changed as well significantly. Some things around kind of my sector, WASH, in those areas have maybe stayed reasonably constant, unfortunately, because we haven't made much progress. But other areas like climate change, for example, have really come to the fore in our kind of loss and damage discussions and things as well. And I think one thing I think this sits really well with the discussion we had last month around partnerships and power, because I think a lot of sustainability comes from having effective power relationships within partnerships as well. So I guess 2 stories to share. One is an exercise we did in the last academic year, which I think was really interesting, and that was bringing students together from so higher education students together from Malawi, China, Sweden, Canada, South Africa and Scotland, who all discussed climate change around COP26, what were the challenges each country faced and things, and what were then the wider sustainability priorities and challenges of each country as well. And I think that really opened my eyes again. I guess living in Malawi for so long, you like to think that everybody is quite conversant with what the challenges are that people face on a day-to-day basis, and it really brought home to me that people are not. And so actually there's a huge amount of dialogue there around sustainability and understanding what the priorities are in different settings. There's an assumption that what's a priority for the UK is also a priority for Malawi, for example, and those kind of areas. And I think that's something we need to be very careful about how we communicate as well. And I think maybe just to talk a little bit about my kind of journey as well, I would say definitely, you know, initially when I was working in Malawi, I think as we talked about with Kondwani last month, there was a situation where, you know, we knew people needed better water and sanitation, and we went full gun on that. And, you know, don't you want sanitation platforms, and don't you want nicer toilets and all these kind of things? But what we didn't do was step back and take time to understand what the priorities of those community members were. And that didn't just go for me coming as an outsider, that also came for Malawian colleagues as well. And, you know, I remember talking to an academic from the Polytechnic at the time who was doing his PhD, and he said to me, you know, I didn't really realise how my other Malawians were living in Chikwawa. I didn't appreciate how they were living and what challenges they were facing. And I think that's also important, that we take that time to understand what the priorities are of people that we maybe think that we're trying to help, and to make sure that we are then listening to that voice and implementing sustainable things then. Because as soon as you're doing something that somebody wants to develop, that's a priority for them, the opportunity for sustainability comes to the fore. It's much stronger. And I guess lastly, just as a kind of punt, I guess, in my area, is just to say that from our experience centering things much more around behavior change and the human factor has much more success. So infrastructure can be incredibly important, but unless you're building that around actual change in behaviour, whether that's to do with agriculture or WASH or any other area, or health access or education, unless we build in those elements as well, then we're unlikely to be sustainable too. So those are just my kind of blurts for now, and I'll hand over. And somehow that spotlighted me in the middle, so I've been looking at a horrific big version of my own face for the last couple of minutes, which has not been pleasant.
No, that's wonderful, Tracy. That's absolutely brilliant. I mean, fantastic points there, that it's changed over the 20 years, that too often we assume that there are the same priorities between Scotland and Malawi, or even between Malawians. And I think it's a brilliant quote there to take away of, you know, as soon as you're doing what communities want, it's much easier to be sustainable. I think brilliant points there. I wonder if I could turn to Jill Matthews and then Jonathan Groves next. Jill, over to you, and thanks again, Tracy, for getting us started.
Hi, so I'm Jill, and I help a couple of groups, one in Malawi on waste and one in Kenya on waste, and another group in Tanzania, which is unfortunately under enormous pressure at the minute, the Masai and Lolionda, where there's horrendous problems. So I would just like to say that this sounds very nerdy, but there is a reason to it. So sustainable is actually an adjective. And one of the problems with sustainability is that it means so many things to different people. And so I've been on courses which have claimed them to be about sustainability, and it's about sustainable finance, or it's about sustainable partnerships, or it's about sustainable development. And we need to qualify. Sustainability isn't anything. It needs to have another word attached to it. Sustainable what? And I think that's part of the confusion. And it means so many different things to different people, and I'm afraid I'm a pro-planet person, and I've worked on environmental issues for so many years, and I've looked at Stockholm Plus 50, and we were talking about this 50 years ago. 50 years ago, and you know, there's no equity, there's no equality 50 years later, and we're still letting economics drive our systems phenomenally. And although we might be, most of us will probably working at the poorer end of the spectrum, the less wealthy, it's the wealthy that are driving all the problems and raping the planet, you know. And we need to not just recognize the needs of the less wealthy communities who are in desperate needs in many cases, but we've got to recognize that these huge corporations are getting away with ridiculous things that are totally unsustainable. So try as we might to be sustainable, I'll use sustainable development because I think it's very rarely achieved. We are a small fry compared to the big problems that the big corporations and countries are sort of causing to the world and the environment and to poverty. Thank you.
Jill, thank you very much. Impassioned point, and absolutely, I think that the language is a really powerful point, and absolutely, we need to be clear what we mean by sustainability, and also your point there about the fundamental elephant in the room with regards to the climate. And you know, as I said glibly at the beginning of this conversation, the hottest day in the UK ever, and yet we all just continue to do much the same. And we should never forget that the scale of those challenges and just how wrong things in plain sight might be. Thank you very much, Jill, for that really valuable contribution. I want to turn to Jonathan next. Jonathan Groves, over to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you, David. I'm the director of the Caruso Trust, which works with a team in Malawi, particularly in church leader training and also training for village chiefs. And my comment really agrees with what Jill has just said about how this word sustainable or sustainability means different things to different people. And perhaps in the context of the Scotland-Malawi partnership, I find that it often means a very different thing to supporters in the UK compared with what it means to partners in Malawi. Thinking about financial sustainability, you often find people this side want to see money goes in for a time limited period, and then working towards at the end of that, there is it's able to just be run and taken forward by people in Malawi, whereas maybe in Malawi they're hoping for a more open-ended financial commitment, say to staffing, and then they can work towards objectives of being able, say in our case, to do teaching. So what we have found is over the 10 years we've been working, we started off our training programs with myself and a Malawian partner, assisted by one or two other Malawians running training events for church leaders. But now, 10 years on, the Malawian team are absolutely running that all the way through from end to end. So in that sense, that training program is sustainable, but it's only sustainable because we're putting the full cost of actually running the week of training in from this side. And if that money wasn't coming in, whatever skills and empowerment we've encouraged from in amongst the Malawian team, it would all begin to fall flat on its face. So is that sustainable by these definitions? We'd say we've achieved a great goal in terms of developing a sustainable training program, because it's being done by the Malawian team in Chichewa from end to end. But then others would say, well, what's your exit plan? And if the exit plan is to move out, move on, start something else, then what have you achieved in terms of sustainability? And then a third area is what does sustainability mean locally out in Malawi? And we've mentioned the environmental sustainability, trying to encourage village chiefs to pass on their patch in as good a condition as they received it when they began their chieftainship. So preventing deforestation or encouraging reforestation, particularly where rivers run down and you get flash floods without soil stability from forests and so on. Well, that comes back to education. Are we encouraging sustainability in Malawi simply by helping encourage our training teams to include this in their curriculum, to make people there more aware of the issue? And so is that developing sustainability? But again, only if we can bring that into the Malawi training team's mind and into their curriculum teaching, so that they continue to pass that on as part of the training, which ultimately we're still funding. So so people this side and people on the Malawian side very much may have very different definitions of sustainability. And also my observation, perhaps in the church context, is people in Malawi more see their responsibility is towards funding their churches, and that NGO operations like ours are something that are just expected to be funded from outside. Whereas again, we have supporters that would be saying what's being done on the Malawian side to help fund these initiatives to train themselves. So again, mismatches of expectations. Thanks.
Jonathan, thanks so much again. Absolutely, this point around definitions and different understandings, and again parallels, of course, to our last discussion on power. And I suppose listening to Jonathan, two things came to me as far as sort of questions rather than answers. Are some modalities of partnership working more inherently sustainable? Jonathan was talking there about training the trainers, and also Jonathan's question that do you need an exit plan? Is sustainability by definition about being able to walk away and end a partnership? So two questions there, and really value views on those and all others. I can't see any other hands up just now. I saw Tracy's comment in the chat box about remember that the voice of leadership, even at the community level, is not always the voice of those in the community level as well. An interesting discussion around the importance of being able to place a GDP value on work. Open space for any contributions. You can put up your digital hand or just unmute and jump in if you would like to come in. I see Alan Whiteside's put up a hand. Alan, over to you.
Hi, David. Thank you. Yeah, my name's Alan Whiteside. I recently started working at the University of Strathclyde with Tracy. But my background's in healthcare. Previously worked with NHS Highland, looking at health and environment. And I think to kind of follow up on what we're saying that around sustainability, it is locally relevant. And to pick up on what you were saying, it's about having the right local partnership of public sector, academia, business, and the representatives, third sector for the public, to look at these shared issues, shared opportunities, work out what are the priorities that are shared, see what can be addressed locally, and then build up to partner with other regions, whether it's within a country or internationally, in order to work out what you can address now, what you can look to address in the future by partnership and picking up knowledge exchange, products and services that will help to provide sustainable development, or things even in Scotland where you don't have the expertise and it will always need to be outsourced. But it's being able to link all these things together so you have a sustainable model that looks at the society, the environment, the economy, and has a holistic approach to see how you can kind of develop models that will improve quality of life for people in that community, but not require external funding beyond its startup in order for it to be maintained.
Absolutely. Thanks ever so much, Alan. Social, environmental and economic understanding of sustainability, taking a holistic approach and looking at what can be achieved beyond the life of a funding period. I think that's one of the really key points. I mean, an idea that I've sort of various sort of governmental consultations over the years sort of floated, and I think probably some members think it's a great idea, some think it's an absolutely terrible idea, and I'll float it again here, and then I'll turn to Tracy. I see hand up there. Thank you, Tracy. But an idea that I had was, trying to shift the way funders think about what they can achieve with their money to not focus on what can be achieved during the period of funding, but what can continue to be achieved after that funding has ended. And I think if I speculate that if funders change that gaze, that focus, that the language that they're using, it might change what grant recipients use those monies for. It's more likely to build those systems, to invest in those relationships and that understanding, and to really think seriously about, we, the grant recipient, are going to be responsible for essentially ensuring this thing continues to deliver over, say, a 10-year time horizon after the funding has ended. So again, that's a provocative question rather than an answer, but I'm going to turn to Tracy, and then I see Stuart's hand is up as well. Tracy, back to you.
I actually thanks, David, wanted to come back to one of the questions that was posed, which was, what does sustainability mean in terms of these funding applications? And I guess what you're saying there actually fits perfectly with that. Traditionally, we write funding applications and we say, oh, there's a sustainability section, and we talk about how that we're going to build capacity in our local partners, and they're going to go off and they're going to do this forever by themselves, and we're going to be obsolete in that. And actually, I think that's a really, really good point and a good question. That's certainly what we used to write in applications around the sustainability part. We're going to do this and then we can leave. But actually, our relationship with working with environmental health, for example, Malawi, has been over 25 years now. And that relationship has consistently changed and grown. It's moved to different programs, different projects. It's built capacity in different people who move off and do other wonderful things across the country and elsewhere, and builds our network. But I think it's very naive of us. And I often think that's what donors are looking for. Like, you're going to be able to walk away at the end of this and everything's going to be hunky-dory. And actually, if we're going to talk about this issue of being global citizens and having global partnerships, then partnerships don't just stop at the beginning and end of a grant. Partnerships are something that go on for a much longer period of time. They're what makes these relationships, these programs and things sustainable. We learn from our Malawian colleagues as much as they learn from us, and we build solutions together. So I actually think that was a really good question to pose by someone previously around that idea of, what do we mean when we write this into funding applications? And I think there's there's a bigger discussion to have around that. It's certainly, maybe it's not something I'd reflected on before, and it's certainly something that's made me think, actually, we have changed how we think about that, but hadn't really done it been cognizant of the fact that we changed that, I guess. Another ramble from me.
No, not at all, Tracy. I thought that was brilliant. And I suppose for me, it's about a core difference between what are we talking about? Are we talking about a project, or are we talking about a partnership? Now, the two obviously overlap in a sort of Venn diagram, but there are fundamental differences as well. And I think some of those differences find expression in what we mean and understand by sustainability. Completely agree. I see Stuart's hand is up. Over to you, Stuart.
Thanks, David. I suppose I'd like to recognise what I see as the vital intervention of the individual and the effort that they make, especially local leadership, to step in, to do whatever's needed, whenever it's needed, to keep the plates spinning and to encourage and empower people in their community. Alan Laverock and Willan Kalinda are involved in the Tafika project, a community-led project, which is also orchestrating and coordinating national and international NGOs with a view to having sustainability and ending reliance on donor aid. So really commend what's going on there with the community-led project. And I wonder whether Alan and Willan would like to comment.
Fantastic, thanks, Stuart. Absolutely. Alan is our finance officer, but also has his own links with Malawi that he will tell us about. And in fact, he's in Mzuzu at the moment with Willan, and delighted, in the spirit of volunteering other people to speak, delighted to volunteer Willan and Alan, speaking from the comparatively chilly Mzuzu.
Yes, I think we're about half the temperature that you have at the moment. I was told it's 28 degrees in Aberdeen. It's certainly not 28 degrees here. I have a very simplistic view of sustainability. And if you have a 12-year-old boy standing in front of you and he says, Bwana, I've not eaten for 3 days and I don't have a shirt. If you say to him, well, I've invested in your father, so in 5 years' time, everything will be okay, he's not going to be terribly impressed. But actually, that's what's needed, although you do have to deal with the immediate problem as well. And so if you feed that boy, he will, he will need fed again tomorrow, and he'll need another shirt in a month's time because he's 12 years old. So I think you need to do both. And that's what I like about the Tafika project, is that they are fundamentally dealing with the issues of their own community. And it's a community-led project. It's led entirely by Malawians. We can input ideas and we can input cash from time to time, we being various different NGOs, but the thing is entirely run by local people. And to my mind, that's the definition of sustainability. They're dealing with their own problems, and they're coming up with solutions to those problems. And now they're investing in assets which will bring in an income. They've planted, I can't remember exactly how many, call it 10 hectares of trees. And the idea is in 10 years' time, they will start to harvest those, and that will cover their running costs. So that project is going to be self-sustaining into the future. And it's not just dependent on one person. There's a group of people in the community, 3, 4, 5 people who are involved. I'm involved with Shupo on the sports side of it, and that's beginning to show dividends. Boys aged 14 who are being fed and who are given an interest in life, being football, are doing twice the national average in the exams. So getting boys to run around and feeding them seems to work. Who knew? And there's a girl is now coming through the system, and she will be in the Commonwealth Games next week in the netball competition. There's various boys and girls coming through the sporting thing. And it's really great to see lives being changed and whole communities being improved through the efforts of a local group. So to my mind, I think if the people exist in Malawi, there is no doubt about that. They don't have the opportunities we have in the West. They don't have the education we have in the West. But if you can find the right people then they will change their own community, which I find a far better model than somebody like me flying out and trying to change it for them. Because when I go home, the project collapses. But if you've got a local community working, then I think that can continue into the foreseeable future.
Fantastic, thanks so much. And Alan, sorry, Willen, it would be brilliant to hear from yourself.
Yeah, for me, you will talk a real life situation of myself, of what sustainability means. I will not hide words, just to be frank and to be truthful of what has happened to me. Alan Lovelock here found me in Livingstonia, in my home village, and he supported me through my education. And from that, I got an employment. And from that employment, I'm able to support my family. My father and my mother, they divorced, and I am the head of that family, in which we are about 8 in our family. So I am the breadwinner of the family, and feeding, giving out school fees to my younger brothers and sisters, and they go through the colleges as well as I have done. So you might see that Alan supported a single person, who is me, but now I am supporting my younger brothers and other few folks from the community. So from one particular person who has been supported, others can be supported through that particular local person within the community. It is the same with what Alan was talking of, Tafika project, whereby many partners coming in, but it is being locally run by local Malawians. So to me, sustainability, I'm taking it in that way, that once it has been identified, an individual has been funded or an organization has been funded, then the local people, they have to take it from there and going forward with it, rather than looking back, asking or looking for funding as well. Thank you.
And make him work for his money.
Willen, thank you so much for your powerful testimony there, and that case made that, you know, investing in individuals, particularly education, actually has that sort of ripple effect, you know, through families and through communities. And Alan, thanks for your contribution there. And as being said in the chat box, if you want to learn more about Tafika and that model, and specifically that sort of Ripple Africa model of investing in commercial forestry to be able to have reliable longer-term financial income for communities, do look at the past event page of the last Malawi cross-party group we facilitated. I'm going to turn to Heather Kubi, our chair, in a moment. Please do continue to put your digital hand up. And it was wonderful to hear from Willen, and really all encouragement, particularly Malawians on the call today. If you would like to share your view, that would be especially appreciated and very powerful. And don't be shy to disagree with anything anyone said. I think we've all agreed that we've all got our own definitions. So please, we're open to different ways of thinking, but really encourage particularly Malawian voices. Heather, over to you.
Thank you, David. Yes, we do all have our own definition, but I think the point Jill made right at the beginning about using words carefully and understanding other people's definitions is really important. And the context will be very different depending on what area you're involved in. So the cervical screening project that I've been involved with for a number of years, I do see eventually as a sustainable service. That's partly because we are already dealing with an educated healthcare workforce who have now been given new opportunities through Scottish Government funding. They have taken that by storm and they own it now. They are hugely committed, and we reached the new stage where our funding, which has helped them take those opportunities, will run out next year. Now, actually, we believe what is required to sustain that service is relatively minimal compared with the grant funding. So where does the minimal come from? And I can't see a route through traditional grant applications. Would that ever be recognised, that perhaps the tailing off, you know, we're talking about having an exit strategy for wherever you've had funding, but actually what if what you really need is just a small amount to keep that going? For example, the equipment we've provided should last an extra 5 to 10 years, doesn't need replaced in at least that time scale. We've never employed anyone in Malawi. We've bought out a little bit of their time, which can be found more readily locally. Their commitment is immense. The service has kept going at a level that it hasn't kept going in the NHS. So we've got quite a lot to learn. And they've made a service which is infinitely cheaper to run at a population level than our own. So I think there is sustainability there, but a little bit of support will be required for longer. And it's how we get there. I put in the chat something about that we will continue with the partnership largely on a volunteer basis, because that continuation doesn't require us to be in Malawi, but it does require some commitment of time and a little bit of training just to keep that going, CPD type training. And I suspect there are quite a lot of other areas in education and agriculture and so on, where you could get to that stage, but that small amount to keep things going a bit longer will become real, result in real sustainability of a particular aspect. Thank you.
Heather, that was really useful to have a practical example laid out like that, the cervical cancer screening project with such efficiency and strong Malawi ownership. But that challenge, as you said, of actually, if there is a small amount of money that's needed to continue longer term, you know, does that mean something's unsustainable? Absolutely, absolutely not. No, great points, Heather. Thank you. And I see Jill, unless that's a legacy hand, I can see Jill's hand up. I wonder if I could turn back to you, Jill.
Thank you once again. Sorry, I don't want to hog the discussion, but I mean, I think I agree with most of the points I've made about education has progressed a long way, health has progressed a long way, financial sustainability, for one thing, is different in the West to what it is in the South or in wealthier countries. But I want to bring it back to what I think is crucial, which is environmental sustainability, and that we in the wealthier countries are using up 3 planets worth of resources. We cannot go on like this, and we should take our hats off to those living in the less wealthy nations who are living within their resources. And our arrogance is astonishing that we continue to promote what we call sustainable development, which is actually sustainable destruction in a lot of cases, because we don't understand how they live so well within their resources. And I'm afraid it is arrogance on the part of the wealthy North, or whatever you want to call us, that we have this blinkered view of how people should live. The long-term sustainability, we must live within our resources. And if you want real equity, whether it's sort of global citizenship that we were talking about and local solutions to local problems, both of which I agree with, we as wealthy nations cannot use 3 planets worth. Equity means we all use 1 planet's worth, not that we use 3 and Malawians lose half. That's not equity. And that, to me, sustainability is getting to that position where equity is a really important goal for global citizenship. Thank you very much.
Jill, thank you very much. And I hear and to a significant degree share your frustration. I've, you know, over 14 years been in too many conversations where there's been a sort of a quasi-judgmental discussions around sustainability, looking at deforestation in Malawi, completely blind to the realities of both contemporary and historic carbon emissions and contributions to the crisis that we're in.
And in our own countries.
Yeah.
We're ignoring it. We're trying to help Malawians, ignoring the problems in our own country.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think humility, self-awareness, and an awareness of the big picture, however uncomfortable that big picture is. The reality in Malawi is only, I think, 9 or 10% of the population have electricity. The overwhelming majority of that electricity is renewable, as I understand it. And actually, it is a far more sustainable existence and society than we can really ever even imagine. Whatever your example, whether it's the bottles being returned or resources reused in innovative ways. I absolutely agree. Jill, thank you very much. Open space now, if anyone would like to contribute. Again, really encourage particularly input from Malawi. Just looking at the chat box. Great stuff. Please feel free, if I haven't seen you, sometimes it's not always easy to scan all the screens, just unmute and jump in should you wish to. I don't know whether Josephine Mapango, whether you would be like to, please feel free, no pressure, but if you'd like to, Josephine, you're most welcome to jump in should you wish to.
Hi, David, and everyone, and well, no pressure indeed, hopefully, on the to comment, but I just wanted to echo the reflections from the Tafika team, who we're currently working with as well. And just to mention that it's powerful, the model that they're using to collaborate with different partners to ensure that the community is moving forward. I think that from them, we're learning the power of the vision that they have and carrying forward something that could be long lasting. And I think that that carries the essence of sustainability in itself. And at a point where different partners are coming in, let's say, for example, to help for a particular period of time and walking out of the community, it's important that themselves as Tafika are holding the vision. And I think that because they're holding on to that, it speaks in great sense in terms of sustainability. So those are just a few comments I wanted to add. Thank you.
Josephine, thanks so much. And again, if anyone wants to learn more about Tafika, really recommend the cross-party group recently in which Josephine and others contributed so helpfully. Any other final inputs to this discussion on sustainability? All are welcome, and really particularly valuable thoughts and experiences in Malawi. Maybe as you have this discussion, your reflections, as Tracy said, your understanding of sustainability has changed over time. Maybe you think you've got ideas of what could be done differently in the way funders approach this question of sustainability. We had that example of, is it good enough that this is a box, box 22 in an application form talking about sustainability? Is that the right approach? And it's a really good time to be having these reflections. The Scottish Government, very commendably, having an active consultation, I hope you've seen, where they're looking to ask these and other related questions about how they should be delivering their international development program to best deliver on their clearly articulated principles and values. Well, friends, with an eye to the clock, let me give a few sort of brief summative remarks, and then we'll close. We're keeping these meetings to a strict 60 minutes. So I'm keen not to sort of drag it out any longer. But I think what we've heard from everyone is the importance of definition, that it's probably not good enough to talk in simplistic terms about sustainability, about what is good sustainability and what is bad sustainability, but rather need to recognize that it's an adjective, that it needs another qualifying word to really understand what we're talking about. I think we've heard the dangers of assumptions, assuming that we have the same view of sustainability here as in Malawi and between different areas of Malawi. I remember being told there's two very different Malawis: the Malawi that's within a mile of a tarmac road, and the 90% of Malawi that is not. We often only listen to the former to the exclusion of the latter. And the need to invest in that understanding, and obvious parallels here to our previous session on power, and this comment that the more a project is driven by leadership in Malawi, and the needs in Malawi, inherently the more sustainable it is. But also this question or this challenge about is sustainability different in a partnership as opposed to a project? Is it right that in a partnership that maybe has been going on for generations and might continue for generations, that we judge the success of sustainability in terms of exit strategies and walking away? We've heard about the relationship between education and sustainability, and very powerful words, particularly from Jill, about environmental sustainability and the importance that we don't tie ourselves up in esoteric or semantic knots about talking about things while ignoring the gross reality, this global truth, this climate crisis that we're facing, and the fundamental issue that we in the global north are living inherently environmentally unsustainable lives. I think that the Tafika example, as well as the cervical cancer screening example, have really added to the discussions, and my thanks to all who have shared there. Final time, if anyone wants to jump in, do just put up a digital or a physical hand or unmute. But if not, I will bring things to a close by thanking everyone for contributing. You'll be able to find on our past event page both a video of the meeting, but also a summative note of the meeting. We're trying to keep it into bullet points, trying to capture as much as we can, and we really want to use this. So please be reassured. Our brief discussion today hasn't just been for the sake of having a chat on a Tuesday afternoon. That we really are looking as a membership network about how do we use the comments, the reflections, the experience, and particularly that Malawian voice to help inform our members. How do we ensure as a community, as a network, that those perhaps who are starting a partnership are able to tap into the experience and learning of those who have been doing it for a little while? Craig, if you'd be kind enough to put the poll up, there's just 2 quick questions as normal. And if you're happy to answer those, quick plug for our 3rd and final in this series. That's taking place on Tuesday, the 16th of August, same time, 11 a.m. in the UK, 12 noon in Malawi. We'll keep it strictly to an hour. And that meeting is on digital inclusivity. Is there equitable access to the new digital world? And I want to invite all input to that, but I particularly would like practical input and ideas before the meeting about how we ourselves can ensure that meeting and all SMP meetings are as inclusive as possible. It would be tragically ironic to have a discussion on digital inclusivity which excluded too many people. So I recognize the potential irony there, and really looking for practical suggestions of what we can do to better encourage and practically support Malawian involvement. Again, recognizing people like Blessings haven't been able to have their voice in our discussion today. One final point, I'm keen to encourage, if you're not already an SMP member, if you're based in Scotland and have an interest in or linked to Malawi, for you to join. We quite often get the question, I don't know if I'm a member, David, I receive your emails. And the easiest way to check that is simply by looking at our membership directory, which is searchable by name, by region, by SDG, by where you're based in Scotland and Malawi. Perhaps Jade, if you'd be kind enough to put in the chat box here a link to the member directory where people can check whether they're a member, but also crucially see what information there is about your link. People often say, wow, I found that on Google and that was 10 years out of date. You can update it yourself. We can support you to update that profile information. And if you're not a member, but you are based in Scotland and you would like to join, Jade will kindly put a link in the chat box now with more information about how you can join. Of course, if you're in Malawi, we really encourage you similarly to join our sister network, the entirely Malawi-owned and Malawi-run Malawi-Scotland partnership. And also, perhaps, Jade, if you could put in the chat box a link to where people can sign up to the bulletin. We quite often get that question as well. So friends, we're finishing just 5 minutes or so ahead of time. A very big thank you to everyone that's contributed. It's very likely that we'll be contacting you in the coming weeks and months and asking if we can use your snippets in innovative ways and places on our website to help encourage members to tap into that expertise. So thank you once again for joining the conversation, for taking time out on what I know is a sweltering day for a great many at the UK side. I think we can offer increased empathy for our friends and partners in Malawi for some of the temperatures that they suffer at other times of the year. So thanks ever so much for your time. Feel free to unmute, turn your camera on and say goodbye. It's always nice at the end. But thanks ever so much, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye.